All right, guys, let's do it. Adding positive slash negative integers. Case 2, different signs. So we're continuing here from last time. All right, so here is some examples of what case 2 looks like when we're adding different sign integers. If you notice, the 5 has no sign to the left, so that means it's positive. Minus 8 means the same thing as adding a negative 8. We talked about that in the last video. So this is positive, this is negative. Here, this is negative 3 plus 9, so negative, positive, right? This is positive, this is negative, positive. Adding a negative 8 here, positive, adding a negative 4. And I'll just go through these answers real quick. So 5 minus 8, that's negative 3. Negative 3 plus 9, that's 6. 7 plus a negative 12, that's negative 5. 7 minus 8 is negative 1. And 11 plus a negative 4 is positive 7. So if these are pretty straightforward from you or for you, then it's good. Move on. Okay. If not, this is what the goal of this lesson here is. So stick around if you need it. So moving right along here, we're going to look at a simple problem, but build it and make sure that you really understand what's being done here, so we can develop some rules. We'll get to the rules later, but now let's understand why the answer is what it is. So we have a negative 3 plus 5. You can think about that credit card or that bank account that you have that's at 0. And the first thing you do with it is you spend $3 right here that you do not have. So that makes, you swipe your card, your account goes negative. I don't know, you buy some candy at the mall or something. So you're left right now with a negative 3 balance, but then you go work and you make $5. So you deposit the $5 into your account. And now we're going to look at the outcome here. So we're looking at this dealing with a number line. And we said we were starting at negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. So negative 3 is where we start at here. This is your account balance going negative. And then you put in that work 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And this brings you to a positive 2. That would be your bank account balance. There is that answer there. And if we do this a different way, utilizing chips, here's your debt, your negative 3. That's the debt. That's for that candy you bought. And then you go ahead and deposit the $5 into your bank account, right? And let's see what happens here. So I don't know if we're used to seeing it like this, but check out what I can do. I can think like for every positive and negative, they cancel out to be 0, don't they? So the positive, this is almost like the concept of you seeing like a hole in, like if you dig a hole, let's say that like at a beach, the sand is level and you dig a hole. So that's like sand. That represents the hole. And that bucket of sand that you took out represents the +1. So if you fill the hole back up, it's flat again, isn't it? So it's the same thing with money. A negative 1 and a positive 1, they'll cancel each other out to be 0. So all of these three things here turn out to be 0. And then we are left only with 2 positives. So that answer of 2 holds just like we expected. And let's see here, one more problem just so we could be on the same page. So this time it's a positive 4, and then we're subtracting 7 or adding negative 7 to it. Again, this is still case 2 because this is positive, and we're adding a negative. Signs are different. So here's 0, and then we got 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is like you depositing $4 in your account and then spending 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. It's going to take us over there. What is that? Negative 3. So this is adding the negative 7 there. And boom. So there is the answer, right? Negative 3. Now, again, we can do the same concept here. And this will always hold. So here's the positive 4. And then we're going to add to that 7 negatives. 4 plus a negative 7. So this is 4 plus a negative 7, right? And again, look what happens. The positives and negatives, So these positives and negatives are canceling each other out. And all we're left with is those 3 negatives. Therefore, the answer holds once again. The answer is -3. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't want to be using a number line and all those chips all the time. So we're going to come up with some rules that's going to help us. This is the first example we just saw a second ago. This is the -3 plus the 5. And what we're going to do is we're going to come up with some rules. We're going to show them off in just a second. But let's look at this, okay? So here's what we're doing. First of all, when you come to a problem, notice the sign over here is negative. The sign over here is positive. So these signs are obviously different, right? And so what we're going to do first is, and as a matter of fact, I'll just start writing the rules off to the side. And again, this is case 2, right? Instead of adding, this time we're going to subtract the 2 numbers, right? And so, look, it's going to feel like you're going to be like, this dude's taking me the long route. But really, what I'm doing is I'm writing everything down so it feels like it's really long. But in the long run, most all of these steps you're going to be able to do in your head, and you're going to quickly be able to just look at a problem and then boom, you got the answer. Okay, so check this out. We're going to subtract, and we're going to do we're going to find the absolute value of these 2 numbers, which is absolute value of -3 is 3, right? Absolute value of 5 is 5, right? Okay, so we're going to subtract big minus the small of the absolute values. Okay, so the big absolute value is 5, the smaller absolute value is 3, and 5 minus 3 is 2. And we're also going to keep the sign of the number with the bigger absolute value. And remember, it's almost like a tug of war between positives and negatives, good and bad, right? Good and evil. So this is the evil -3. This is the positive 5. Who has more troops? The positives do in this case, right? So the positives are going to win. And that's what we're saying. Keep the sign of the number with a bigger absolute value. Remember, this had an absolute value of 5. This had an absolute value of 3. So the positives are going to win in this case. And that's why this answer is +2. And again, if it starts off being positive to the left, we don't show the plus sign. We assume that it's +2. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to keep that same rule in mind when we do this here. Example 2. So the absolute value of 4 is 4. And I could write it, but I think I might just confuse people by writing it. So there's a 4. The absolute value of 4 is 4. Absolute value of -7 is 7, right? So 7 and 4, that's the bigger absolute value is 7. Smaller absolute value is 4. 7 take away 4 is 3. And it looks like evil wins this time, right? The negatives win. There's more negatives. So I'm going to keep the sign of the number with a bigger absolute value. This has an absolute value of 7, which is bigger than 4, and it's negative. So therefore, -3, that's the answer there. All right, so there is example 2. Let's try another one. Okay, here we go. Simplify. -10 plus 6. So again, I'm going to take the absolute value of this, which is 10. Absolute value of this is 6. 10 take away 6 is 4. And it looks like the negatives win. There's more negatives. -4. I'm telling you, it gets really quick once you get good at doing it. You just got to practice, right? And example 4. So the sign here, the sign is positive, the sign is negative. We're adding different signs, therefore we're in case 2. The absolute value of this is 4, absolute value of this is 8, and then big minus a small 8 take away 4 is 4. And it looks like the negatives win. There's more negatives. -4 is our answer right there. And example 5 here. Feel free to pause throughout any of this if I'm going too fast for you. -7 plus 4. So what do we have? We have a negative, and we're adding a positive. Signs are different. We're in case 2. We need to subtract, but let's look at the 2 absolute value of each number. Absolute value of -7 is 7. Absolute value of 4 is 4. Bigger one is 7, smaller one is 4. So 7 take away 4 is 3. And it looks like the negatives are winning because there's more negatives. That the absolute value of negative 7 is 7. That's bigger than the absolute value of 4, which is 4. So the negatives win. Final answer, negative 3. And I'm talking a lot, but really everything that I'm saying is going to be like in your head pretty soon, and you're going to be able to just do that in your head. Okay, so I'm going to give you a formal layout, and I know this is going to look big and complicated, but don't let it scare you, man. Check this out. So first of all, let me just say this. Okay, so we're going for the top of adding positive / negative integers. That's what this whole thing is about. We've already talked about case 1. We're on to case 2 right now, right? So this is the first part of the rule. Okay, case 2, signs are different signs, right? So the first thing you always do when you come to adding positive and negative integers is you see if the signs are the same or they're different. This is case 2. We're looking at them. We identify that they're different. Now, I was just doing this, guys. I know there's a lot of words, but let's just read what it says slowly. Okay, it says subtract the absolute value of the bigger number minus the absolute value of the smaller number. So do you remember I was just finding the 2 absolute values of each of those numbers, right? And then I was subtracting big minus small. So that's all that this is saying here. And on the next slide, I'm going to show you a shorter way, condensed version of this that, but this is the formal way. This is the real way to think about it, right? And then the second thing we're going to do is we're going to keep the sign of the number with a bigger absolute value. So remember we were just saying, did the negatives win? Did the positives win? Whoever won, that sign is going to be the sign of our answer, okay? And lastly here, guys, this is a simplified version of what I just showed you on the last slide here, adding positive / negative integers. This is case 2 again, different signs. The simple way is just to say, hey man, subtract the numbers, keep the sign of the bigger number. This is what most teachers will tell you out there without getting too technical. That's, this is what is the norm of what's said. But again, there is that detail because you got to remember that when you're subtracting, you're evaluating the absolute values, and then you're subtracting big minus small, and that's where you're getting the subtraction there. And then you got to keep the sign of the bigger number. Side note that I wanted everybody to remember is that whenever you subtract the big number minus a small number, and they're both positive, because an absolute value of any number is always positive, you're going to be left with a positive number. If you don't believe me, take any 2 positive numbers and make one bigger than the other. 197. Oh no, 100, and then the other number is 97. So 100 minus 97 is 3, and that's a positive number. You could take any 2 numbers that are positive and subtract the big minus small, and it will always be positive. So if you're doing this correctly, step 1 will always be positive. And then all you got to do is find out who won, the negatives or the positives. So we're kind of like breaking it down into simpler steps to be able to evaluate these problems really quickly and really accurately. And that concludes our session here today. Keep in mind, I will post just like run through examples where I show you a problem, and then maybe you can put it on pause, try the problem, and then see if you get. Then I'll do the work, and then you can see if you're getting it right. Just to practice as well. There's going to be PDFs with material and practice problems that you and perhaps maybe your teacher or somebody out there that can help you to see if you're right can roll through. Okay, my dog's barking like a maniac. I don't know if you can hear him, but y'all have a good one. See you in the next one.